some calls just mean more to you than others. And this particular call and this particular morning was pretty special. 4 years ago, when I got into making pot calls, I had no clue what I was doing. I borrowed a lathe from my brother-in-law. I drove up to Woodcraft and said, this is what I'm wanting to try to turn on a lathe. I need the chuck and the jaw and the tools to do it. And they set me up, and I bought a few boards, and home I went. Excited for my new venture of trying to figure out how to make turkey calls. Man, I tell you what, I just went wild there for a few hours and turned several and got the finish on them and ordered materials for soundboards and surfaces. Glued them all up, and with high anticipation of my new turkey killers I just put together. They were awful. I mean, those first calls were just terrible. I don't even think they would call in a 2-year-old. I fired up only a 2-year-old bird. They were that bad. So I got on the old Gobbler message board, and under the call making tab there, posed the question, laid out the scenario of what I just told you, that I was wanting to learn to make pot calls. Would anybody have any help? And there was a man by the name of Jack Lewis. He went by the handle Pappy on that forum, and Pappy made a big long post with some thoughts and comments and suggestions, and then he left his phone number and said, give me a call. I immediately, upon reading that, got on the phone with him and spent the better part of the next hour listening to Pappy talk about the different harmonic qualities of various woods, life in general, turkey hunting, back to making calls. And he started giving me some dimensions of the diameter and the wall thickness, the overall pot thickness, and your shelf height, and your pedestal, and your soundboard gap, and all the measurements that are important to make these calls sound like turkeys. When he was giving that advice, he was giving a range. Make your overall pot thickness between 0.75 and 0.95, maybe an inch. Make your internal depth from your shelf height down maybe anywhere between 0.30 and 0.45. Make your soundboard gap between 0.10 and 0.125, etc., etc. Very wide ranges. I didn't know much about turning calls, but I knew that, a few thousandths or a hundredth of an inch makes a huge difference, and these were wide gaps. And I asked Pappy, I said, can you give me any more guidance? Could you get me a little bit closer than that? And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, Nathan, listen, if I give you anything more specific to what you need to do, then you're just making the same call that Pappy makes. You're just another person making Pappy's call. He said, within those variances, you can work up a mixture and a combination that works for you, and then you can be making Nathan Taylor's calls and not Pappy's. And that's something that stuck with me for the last several years. I mean, that's something that advice can transcend not just turkey calls, but so many other things that we do in life, of trying to mimic others when we should be worrying about being our best self and focusing on what the combination is for us to be a better us than to be like someone else. Last winter when I was digging, or last fall actually, I was digging through some call materials in a dresser drawer. Actually, it was just a few weeks after I learned of the passing of Pappy. And when I was digging through there, I found a couple of pieces of titanium. And Pappy bought out a liquidation of titanium call blanks from a different call company, and he had piles of these things. So I bought some from him, and I didn't really know much about making calls then. I knew a little bit more than our first conversation. But anyhow, I wanted to try some titanium out. And I made a few calls, and for whatever reason, I still had 2 blanks. And I wanted to make a very special call to remember a very special person, the first person that ever took the time and interest in wanting to mentor me in being a call maker. And the turkey that I killed this morning, although he didn't come in gobbling and hammering, I just worked a series on this call of just when I laid my call down, off in the distance above me, I could hear a and it wasn't but a few seconds later and he came into sight. You know, as exciting as it would have been if he would have came in gobbling and hammering, I think it's probably fitting that Pappy's looking down today with a smile on his face and realized that bird coming in silent tested my patience, much like trying to figure out what sizes I needed to make in a combination to make a call sound like a turkey. Pappy, I'll never forget the advice. Thank you.
He just come out of nowhere silent. Oh man. Boy, you're old one. He's that white-winged one.